Hey everyone, welcome back to Dethroning Your Inner Critic. If you're new here, I'm Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist, leadership coach, and creator of the Mind Method. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's great to have you here again. This is where I share practical tools and insights to help you navigate self-doubt and perfectionism and anxiety, and ultimately lead a more fulfilling and purpose-driven life. And today I want to talk to you about the concept of your emotional home. Now, later on, I will share about what is my emotional home and how it held me back for years, and how I changed my emotional home and how you can too. But I want to first talk about what is an emotional home. Well, having an emotional home means that there is a set of emotions that you consistently return to no matter what's happening in your life. So it's like an emotional default mode in your mind that you switch back to, almost like a resting state of your emotions. Now, for many people, these default emotions might be worry or fear, anxiety, or even feelings of unworthiness or lack. And for other people, it could be frustration, it could be resentment, or it could even be anger. So let's talk about understanding the origins of your emotional home. Where does an emotional home even come from? It's typically rooted in a combination of your past experiences, your automatic conditioning in your mind, and the beliefs that you've formed over time. Now, from a young age, we learn how to react to the world around us. And it's usually based on what we've seen or what we've experienced in our own families and the environments that we were raised in. So if you grew up in a household where conflict was something that you experienced a lot, you might find yourself more prone to feeling stress, feeling frustration, feeling anger as an adult. And you might keep returning to these emotions when something challenging shows up in your life. Now, this is, of course, because we're never really responding to the situation or the circumstance that's in front of us. Okay, we think we're responding to that circumstance, but really it is those automatic thoughts and beliefs that get triggered by the circumstance in front of us. And that's really what we're returning to, right? So if we were taught maybe directly or indirectly that we had to earn love through our achievements, we might find ourselves returning to feelings of unworthiness or self-doubt, even after we've accomplished a tremendous amount in our life. But there are times where things don't go perfectly or they don't go the way that we expected them to go. And that's when we feel those feelings over and over and over again. And we keep believing that somehow, it's the circumstances of our life that are somehow going to make those deeply held, painful emotions go away. And of course, they never do. So let's talk about the stories that we tell ourselves, because our emotional home is shaped by these stories that we tell ourselves over time. So most of us don't really look at our minds and examine the programming, literally like a computer program that we've had for most of our life. Okay. So if your mind has been programmed to believe that you're not enough or that your life is a constant struggle, right? Those emotions will keep showing up. They'll keep becoming the place that you return to when things don't go as planned. And that's because it's familiar. Might not be healthy, but it's familiar. Okay. This is where your mind feels most comfortable, even if it's not where you want to be. So you can think about it like a thermostat in your home. If you set a certain temperature, right, when the environment changes, the thermostat kicks in and it brings things back to that original setting. Okay. So our emotional home works the same way. If we don't know our default setting, like if we don't know that setting is frustration or fear, that's what you'll feel when life doesn't unfold the way that you expect it to, even when something positive happens, right? You might find yourself waiting for that other shoe to drop or looking for the reasons to worry because that's what feels familiar. Trust me, I am very much aware of the pattern and habit of worry and anxiety because that is part of my emotional home. So there is a lot of power in awareness. Awareness allows you to change your emotional home, okay? You can change your emotional home just like you can change the thermostat in your house. You can reset the emotional temperature that you live in, but it starts with becoming aware of those default emotions and understanding where they come from. Now, I will tell you that trying to figure out your default emotions when you're triggered into those default emotions is not going to work. Because when you're triggered into those emotions, you only have access to the fight, flight, freeze part of your brain. Okay. So awareness has to take place at a time where you're not triggered, right? When you're not triggered, you can actually lean into, why did I have such a reaction yesterday when my coworker said this, or when my son said this, or when this thing didn't go the way that I had planned? And you can really lean into that reactivity. Okay. Now that awareness allows you to start to get curious. And when you get curious, now you can consciously choose new emotional responses over time because you're recognizing, oh, I'm getting triggered here into that familiar feeling that in some way I'm not worthy or I'm not important or I don't matter or I'm not good enough. Okay. Now that's going to feel uncomfortable at first, right? Intentionally drumming up those feelings of unworthiness or of feeling judged or being afraid that something's going to fail or not go the way that you want it to. Okay. But by doing that inner work, by continuing to make the room and the time and the space in your day to challenge those beliefs that keep you stuck in fear or doubt, and actually practicing in your mind, responding differently when things don't go the way that you planned, practicing self-compassion, practicing letting go of judgment, you can actually shift your emotional home into a place of peace and gratitude and joy. Again, it's not something that happens overnight, okay? And that change, when you're able to access that peace and gratitude and joy, that doesn't just change or transform your life. It changes the lives of everyone around you, especially those that you care about the most, because they actually see who you really are. Very often, we don't see who we really are, but the people in our life that love us, they see our true, authentic selves. And they don't understand why we keep getting triggered into these emotional responses that don't match who we really are. Okay. So, most people, unfortunately, aren't doing inner work. So they're just operating on autopilot. So they keep getting triggered into the same emotions over and over again. And they keep believing it's the circumstances that are causing these emotions, but it's not. It's those default emotions that have been our emotional home for most of our lives. So our deepest fears and worries keep us stuck in these old patterns of thoughts and beliefs about ourselves and our lives, when what's so heartbreaking is that we're capable of so much more, right? So in my Mastering Your Mind program, I talk to women all the time that have been holding on to dreams for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they haven't taken action on those dreams. Why? Because their emotional home, their default emotions, their default beliefs that create those default emotions are running their lives. Okay. And most people live their whole lives understanding that that's who they really are. And they're not. See, most people don't understand that we are one leap of faith away from moving towards a life that would truly make us happy. But instead, so many people are living in the version of their younger self, right? It is their younger self that keeps creating their life now and that keeps creating their life moving forward, right? So they're continuing to be directed by the fear that was installed at a time when they were at their most vulnerable point in their emotional development, right? That often happens between the ages of 3 and 10 is when we don't have any understanding of who we really are and how the world works. And unfortunately, that's when we are formulating these beliefs about ourselves, these beliefs about what's possible for us and what's possible for our lives. So here's a very mind-blowing truth. Anger is actually the flip side of fear. So when you see someone angry, what you're really seeing is somebody who is scared of losing control, scared of not being enough, scared of failing. They don't realize that they are actually capable of leaning into that anger and getting underneath that anger, getting through the pain that is really just fear. Now, that anger is protecting them from that deeper fear, right? Now, particularly, this shows up a lot with men. Men don't like to feel fear, right? So a lot of times for men will manifest anger to protect them from their fear, okay? Now, that's really what your automatic mind is. It's just fear that you've been dragging around with you for your entire life, and you've been mistaking it for your true self. Now, trust me, I know this firsthand. This is why I created all of the work that I do in the world. I still have an automatic mind that feeds me daily fears of failure and being judged and feeling like I'm not good enough, right? And it doesn't matter how much I accomplish. My automatic mind will always be there, always regurgitating the same old thoughts and the same old fears. But the difference is when you know that you are separate from that mind, now you stop taking guidance from it, right? It still might feel uncomfortable to take actions towards your dreams. But for people who haven't done their inner work, when they think about making changes, when they think about stepping out of their comfort zone, particularly when they feel that they are stepping into the complete unknown, it can feel like you might die, right? Now, deep down, we know we won't die, but that's just how deep these younger patterns within us are running us. Because those patterns were installed into our minds and into our nervous systems at a time where we were so vulnerable that it actually did feel like we would die, right? It actually did feel that way if somebody got angry at us, if somebody were disappointed in us, if we didn't measure up, if we didn't feel like we were enough. But it's just your younger programming. So I want to ask you, what is your emotional home? What are these emotions that you keep returning to again and again, regardless of what's happening in your life and how your life looks? Okay? Because once you become aware of your emotional home, now you have the power to change it. Okay? So I'll share with you a personal story that's been a driving force in my life for as long as I can remember. I've always wanted my kids to see me playing full out in life. I wanted them to see me full of joy, full of self-expression, and I wanted to have them watch me going for my dreams. Okay. And that desire to be an example for them shaped everything that I do, right? I wanted them to grow up witnessing what it looks like to pursue their potential and to find inner self-acceptance and inner self-compassion and to see their own value. But for the longest time, my mind would get in the way of my own joy and fulfillment because I had all of these attachments and demands about how life was supposed to go. Okay. So basically, I had these ideal pictures, right? I had these mental pictures of what success looked like and what happiness looked like and what fulfillment looked like. And when life didn't fit into those pictures, it affected my emotional home. It impacted every aspect of my inner world. So, of course, my inner world affected my actual family, my actual home. It impacted my marriage. It impacted the way I showed up as a mom. It impacted my connection with my kids because I found myself struggling how to access gratitude and joy and peace because I was constantly comparing myself and my life to how I thought it should be. And this is where your ideal pictures and your emotional home are intimately connected. Okay. I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on myself to live up to this idealized version of life. And all that pressure kept me from being present with myself, present with who I really am, and present with the people that I love the most. And that's why this work has been so powerful for me. It has completely transformed every important aspect of my life. And it began with becoming deeply aware of the fear that showed up every time I tried something new and something outside of my comfort zone. And once I started seeing it as my younger self programming, right? That was my inner critic self. Okay. I now had the power to start to unhook from my younger program self. And I had the power to actually rewire very different thoughts and beliefs about not just about who I was and what I could create, but how I would handle failure and rejection and criticism and things not going my way, right? So I imagined failing, being judged, being criticized, being rejected. And I had to really lean into knowing now I can handle that. I couldn't handle that as a young child. It did feel like death, right? But when I started really doing that deep inner work, I realized that the people that I was most worried about judging me or not liking me or thinking that I wasn't enough were people that had no bearing in my life. So once I clearly saw that this was just a version of my younger self, kind of on autopilot, right? It's not really me. That's when I could begin to take actions towards a vision, even when I had no idea how that vision was ever going to manifest in my life. I let my vision lead the way. I let the present me design my life because the present me, that's my true authentic self, right? That's the one that shows up when I unhook myself from the younger me. That's just my inner critic me. So by learning to unhook myself from my inner critic's attachments by surrendering the need to control and the need to know how things were going to go, I can now start trusting my intuition to lead the way. I could start trusting the flow of life. I could know that if something didn't turn out, it wasn't a reflection of me. And it wasn't a reflection that my vision wasn't going to manifest. It was just information. So I continue to unhook myself from that constant cycle of expectations and disappointments. And that shift has allowed me to experience real, profound joy and gratitude and peace, not because everything is perfect and everything's going the way that I want it to be, but because I've learned to be fully at peace and in joy and in gratitude with life as it is. And from that place, now I can take steps towards my vision. But that's a very fundamentally different life. And living that life has changed my marriage, changed my relationship with my kids. And most importantly, it's allowed me to be the example that I always wanted to be for my kids, which is someone who's living from a place of authenticity and inner freedom, right? And that is exactly why I gave up my traditional private practice that I had built for over 15 years to create the mind method that now 10 years later has evolved into something where, I'm now teaching hundreds of people all over the world. I'm now certifying practitioners to take the mind method into their businesses, because I made an agreement with myself that no matter what my inner critic self said, I would continue to unhook myself from those old programmed fears and doubts and insecurities and feelings of unworthiness. And I would just take the next step. And that is my passion, is to now support other people in doing the same. Now, that's how you step into a life that you sense is possible. You connect to the excitement, the possibility of what that vision holds for you. I had no idea 10 years ago how to create the life that I'm living now. Okay. And here's another mind-blowing truth. Physiologically, fear and excitement are exactly the same thing. They show up exactly the same in your body. The only difference is your thoughts. So instead of connecting to your inner critic's fear-based thoughts, if you could train yourself to connect to the excitement and possibility of whatever it is that you're designing for your life, that's how you change your life. That's how I got to where I am, one small step at a time over the course of 10 years, and I'm still creating. And there are days where my nervous system is shot because my inner critic had a field day, but now I know what that is. Now I know how to flow with guiding that unconscious automatic mind through this difficult process. See, living a life of intentionality, of higher consciousness, living a life where you're really living your purpose and really fulfilling on what you are meant to do in this lifetime, it's not easy. It's not all rainbows and sunshine, okay? So you see all of these people out there that have the life that you want. I promise you, they have the same doubts and fears and feelings of inadequacy that you do. They struggle with the same inner feelings of overwhelm and frustration and anxiety and feeling defeated. The only difference is they don't let that stop them. Now, I want to take that one step further. It's not just that you don't let that stop you. It is that you have a choice moment by moment by moment, what emotions, right? What your emotional home is going to be in that moment, right? So when you tune yourself into thoughts that connect you with gratitude and joy and peace and being present to who you already are and what you've already created, you change your emotional home. You change your experience of yourself and your life in that moment, right? it doesn't mean that you change the circumstances. It is literally just changing the lens through which you're seeing yourself and your life, right? Your default emotional home will continue to take you back to the fear and the doubt and the what if and the worst case scenarios, right? So I want my children to know what it feels like to live a life of worthiness and a life where they aren't constantly chasing outside validation, but they're instead rooted in their own inner peace. And the only way for them to learn that is to catch it from me. See, your kids know whether you're happy or not. They know whether you're living your life's purpose or not. They know whether you are contributing to the world or not. They know whether or not you're fully living. They can feel it. When you're making a difference with other people, when you're living your life's purpose, when you're doing something that lights up your soul, there's a sense of joy and fulfillment that you carry with you, right? And when you aren't living that life, other people, particularly your kids, sense that too. So we can't just tell our kids to go after their dreams. We have to show them what it looks like to go after our own. And I've seen this firsthand, how important it is for kids to witness their parents chasing hard things, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it means stepping into the unknown. See, when we don't pursue our potential in whatever way that looks, when we settle, we cheat our kids out of something really special because they'll never get to know the fullest version of who we could have been, right? So for me, this isn't about success in that traditional sense, right? I don't think my kids care at all about how much money I make or what my title is. They care about whether I'm experiencing joy. They care whether there's laughter in my life. They care about whether I'm living in a way that feels aligned with who I truly am. And what I've come to understand is that it's not just about me being that good role model. It's really about me deeply loving myself enough to pursue my dreams. Because when I love myself, when I'm living fully, they catch that. And I spent so much of my life believing the lie that if I achieved enough, I would finally feel enough. But here's the thing about achievement. Achievement definitely does build confidence, but it doesn't build worth. It doesn't build worthiness. Worthiness is an inside job. And if you don't believe that you're worthy, no amount of success or external validation will ever fill that void. Now, let's be real. Every single one of us has limiting beliefs. Even the most successful people you know struggle with limiting beliefs. But the difference between staying stuck and breaking through is recognizing those beliefs and choosing not to let them control your life. And that takes consistent inner work. Now, this is exactly why I've devoted my life to helping others find their worthiness and their value, because there are too many people out there that really have big goals and dreams to change the world, to change other people's lives, right? And because they can't find their full worthiness and their value, they don't take those steps. And I've seen the ripple effects on both sides. I've seen what it looks like when you know your worth and you embrace your value, and I've seen what it looks like when you don't. So if you are raising children, even if you've got grown children, they pick up on your energy. And that becomes a foundation for how they see themselves. I've worked with women that have become who they've always envisioned that they want to be in their 50s and 60s. And that just by becoming, right, that version of themselves that was shoved down and hidden all along, right, underneath that inner critic self, when they finally step into their true authentic selves, everybody in their life transformed as a result. Now, here's something that I've learned personally, and I've seen it again and again and again. Okay. If you don't raise your own worthiness thermostat, you will unconsciously and automatically sabotage yourself. You might even start getting results that exceed what you think you deserve, but before you know it, that unconscious emotional home steps in, right? And before you know what you're doing, you are unconsciously cooling your life back down to what feels familiar. And that's why so many people settle for good enough, because they haven't adjusted that internal thermostat to match the life that they're truly capable of living. Now, I've been there. I've seen myself get close to something great. And back when I felt like I didn't quite belong, like I wasn't worthy, I unconsciously sabotaged it. Okay. I found a way to cool things back to a level that matched what I thought I deserved. But that's the work that we all have to do, to continually raise that worthiness thermostat so that when we step into our full potential, we can sustain it. And that's why I'm sharing this message with you, because you have to learn what gets in your way of loving yourself so deeply, such that you can keep going for your dreams, even when it gets hard, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when you have no idea how your life will unfold. You have to keep raising that thermostat, because your life and the lives of the people who depend on you are worth it, right? So what this is basically about is living your life from a new paradigm, where you're living from wholeness rather than from fear and control and anxiety. So I want to ask you today, are you playing full out in your life? Are you showing the people around you, could be your kids or your friends or your colleagues or your partner, are you showing them what it looks like to live fully expressed, to really go for your dreams, whatever that is, to embrace your worth? So one of the biggest, I'll say, life hacks that I talk about is learning how to become your own best friend, right? When we're going through something difficult, what if we started talking to ourselves like you would a best friend? And what if when we've accomplished something or we're really excited about something, what if we celebrated ourselves like we would a best friend, right? What if you learn to encourage yourself like you would your best friend, right? So that, again, is a muscle that gets developed over time. Okay. I carve out space and time in my day, whether I'm journaling or I'm speaking out loud, to talk to myself in a way where I am cultivating a loving relationship with myself. Because let me tell you something, my inner critic voice is not loving. My inner critic voice is harsh, it's condemning, and it's perfectionistic, right? So if I'm not managing that relationship with myself, my default emotional home is to find all of the ways where I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough woman, and I'm not a good enough friend, and I'm not a good enough daughter, and I'm not a good enough wife, and I'm not a good enough mother, and I'm just not a good enough person. So finding that inner peace through self-acceptance is crucial. And it begins with understanding what radical self-acceptance is about. Okay. What that is about is embracing yourself exactly as you are, especially in the parts of you that feel the most unlovable, where you start to do the inner work to replace judgment with understanding. Instead of criticizing yourself for your mistakes or your flaws or where your life doesn't match those ideal pictures, you begin to hold yourself with compassion. And that is where self-blame or that inner feeling like you're not enough slowly starts to dissolve. And it gives way to a deeper sense of ease and intention, even so that when somebody's upset with you or they're disappointed with you, you're not so defensive and you're not, riddled with shame or anger or frustration. Okay. Now, this isn't about letting yourself off the hook. This isn't about avoiding growth, but it is about cultivating a loving space where growth can happen without that weight of self-judgment. Okay. So as you are learning to practice this radical self-acceptance, you'll find that you become more comfortable, not just in your own skin, right? But you'll also start to have room and space for other people to be who they are. You won't personalize it so much when people don't treat you the way that you want them to treat you, right? So the parts of yourself that you might have once tried to hide, they don't feel so shameful anymore, okay? You don't need to run so much, right? From that discomfort. So instead, you're able to create stillness within yourself. And that stillness is what allows you to just simply be. And it's in that stillness that you find your true, authentic self, right? So your life transforms by transforming your emotional home, right? It is an essential step towards living a life that feels aligned and not just a life that's good enough, right? When you're no longer running from yourself, when you've embraced that stillness, when you've learned to listen to the deeper wisdom that's already there within you, now you're opening the door to living a life that resonates on a soul level, okay? So I want to leave you with this thought today. You were born for a reason. You are not here by accident. You have gifts and talents and a unique purpose that the world desperately needs. So stop believing the lies that you're not good enough, that you're not capable, or that it's too late for you, because it is never too late. You are capable of so much more than you realize, and it is time to step into that truth. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're doubting yourself right now, I want you to know that you have everything inside of you already to create the life that you want, because you were built for this. And if today's episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear this message, because you never know whose life you could change by simply sharing what you've learned today. So thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. So choose them wisely and start living the life that you are meant for. Thanks for tuning in today.